Let's talk about the first major shift. You might be thinking, come on, is this guy just making stuff up? Where's the proof? Right? Okay, let me back this up. You can check out the details in TOGAF10. There's no official Chinese version yet, so I'll be referring to the English version. The first point addresses supporting enterprise agile. It later evolved into what some call business agile. This differs from the traditional agile approach. Back then, agile was purely about software development. You with me so far? Today, agile has truly evolved to the enterprise level. We're talking about enterprise-wide implementation. Alright. To get a grip on enterprise agile, let's look at McKinsey's take on it. They break down enterprise agile into 3 key parts. At the foundation, we have the team level. Pretty straightforward, right? For those familiar with SCRM, you'll recognize this concept. The middle tier is what McKinsey calls the program level. They stick with the term program. For this level, if you're not comfortable with this term, you can use product instead. That's perfectly fine. At the highest level, McKinsey uses the term enterprise level. So regardless of the terminology, whether it's McKinsey's or others, the key is to fully embrace enterprise-wide and business-level agility. This is part of McKinsey's Agile Manual. Now, let's move on to the second point. As you may know, TOGAF, when it comes to its implementation, the core component is ADM. It's essentially TOGAF's most powerful tool. It's a game changer. ADM is incredibly thorough and can help you tackle the numerous aspects of EA work. The entire ADM has now embraced agility. This is covered in section 9.2. It doesn't actually say that. In section 2, he only mentioned iteration. Right, he just used the term iteration. He was pretty vague about it. However, by the 10th edition, he switched iteration to agile. Okay, let me show you. I've picked out a few images to look at. This image actually contains 2 key points. Someone pointed out e-teacher about this English part. You haven't translated it yet. There's no translation available for it at the moment. There's no official way to translate it publicly. I can't edit the image on my end either. Let's discuss this for a moment. As you're all aware, we're developing the architecture within TOGAF. Our architecture has 3 layers. Before we continue, let's quickly review this concept. Remember this, everyone. We discussed this in our last session. Let's talk about the John Zuckerman model. Who is Zuckerman? He's the key figure in enterprise architecture. This leader established the principle EA consists of 6 layers. Let's quickly recap these 6 layers. 6 layers, remember. Now, these 6 layers and our 3 layers can actually be compared in a way. However, as we've discussed before, the first layer is officially called context. The second layer is concept. The third is logic. The fourth is physical. The fifth is component. As for the sixth, it has several possible names. The user, or service, operation, or product. They all work. We suggest focusing on the middle 4 layers. The top and bottom layers aren't as relevant. The first layer is purely strategic planning. Let's put this into context. The 6th layer represents the actual operational domain. This is where products are used and users interact. Now for the middle 4 layers, if we make another cut, layers 2, 3, 4, and 5. Layers 2, 3, and 4 form what we call the architecture, which follows rules set by the core business. And then where this represents our solution. Alright, so 2, 3, and 4 represent the conceptual, logical, and physical layers. These layers correspond to the numbers. Also, it's not a one-to-one correspondence. We're just introducing this concept from now. Actually, in TOGAF, ADM addresses problems across 4 layers. We've only mentioned 3 of these layers so far. First, second, and third. There's also a 4th layer. Okay, let me break it down for you. The 4th layer is solution delivery. It corresponds to the 5th layer in the official document. The first 3 layers are officially termed strategic segments and capabilities. This terminology. Let's use an example to illustrate. Consider this. Let's look at a larger scale. The city of Chicago. Planning for a city like Chicago represents the strategic level. Let's take a specific area in Chicago. For instance, the downtown area. This city center falls into a specific category. In this downtown area, the high-ranking officials and their relocation represent a certain level of authority. Right? Corporations follow a similar structure. I'll spare you the details. So that's the basic idea. It's known as strategic segmentation capability. You see, all this can be managed using ADM. Next comes the solution implementation. So, how does strategic segmentation capability relate to this? Strategy is mostly conceptual with a hint of logic. Segmentation, on the other hand, is primarily logical with a touch of conceptual thinking and a bit of physical aspect. As for the capability layer, it's more on the physics side with a touch of theory. See, you're pressing me for an explanation. I can only put it this way. This relationship between concepts, what I'm really doing is just refreshing your memory and giving you a quick review. But that's not the main thing. The key is to understand that in architecture, there are long, medium, and short-term aspects. That's it in a nutshell, right? Whether you're looking at long, medium, or short-term goals, you can apply agile planning methods to all of them. It's pretty straightforward, really. Everything can be planned using agile principles. All right. The real question is can your approach be agile? Of course. That's exactly what Dr. SSA excels at. So that's the idea, you see. Look at how they've mapped TOGAF planning to align with the CF framework. Of course, it can also be aligned with traditional SCRM methods. This alignment is perfectly valid. Our SCRM doesn't quite reach this scale. Alright, here's an illustration from our book. Regarding this image, I'll compare it to another diagram. This diagram is taken from SF. SAFe was officially mentioned. We should look at the SAF framework. So here's the original shift diagram about SAFe. If we look at the current 5.1 version, in this 5.1 version, it's actually structured in layers. You see, it's shown as 4 layers. In reality, the key architectural elements are in these 3 areas. It's similar to what we discussed earlier. This is the crucial delivery part where the real work happens. It's what we referred to earlier at the bottom, the underlying components. This represents enterprise architecture. Next, we have solution architecture. And here, system architecture. That's it. Yes, it all lines up perfectly. It matches our strategic breakdown. This is how structures it. What's next? This contains 2 key points. The first one is in TOGAF version 10, whether it's long-term, medium-term, or short-term planning. Naturally, the longer the term, think about it like this. The longer the term, the less detailed your plan, and the broader its scope, right? Wouldn't you agree? We've just covered this strategic concept. The relationship between logical and physical components, exactly, it's all about these relationships. Everything can be approached with agile methodologies. Moving on, the second point is that whether we're talking about solution delivery or architectural planning, both can be approached with agility. This applies to both vertical and horizontal aspects. Agility is key throughout. Now let's examine this. We've introduced a specific term for this. This term comes from TOGAF10. However, I first introduced it by referencing the CF framework. The concepts align. It describes 2 types of architectures. I'll keep the English terms. The first is intentional, meaning purposeful or deliberate, a planned architecture. The second is emergent. Suddenly, he introduced a new concept. This particular content extracted from the 10th edition of his work. Let's take a look at this diagram. This term comes from SF. It suggests intentional architecture design. This is called intentional architecture. Number 9 here is responsible for this aspect. But here's the thing, your team or solution delivery unit can offer feedback. So he goes, well, I have a brilliant idea. Or maybe it's more like, you know what, there's a problem with this part. They point out the issue and you've got to make changes. All right, we'll fix it up. See, that's what we call emergent behavior. So it combines these 2 approaches. So that's the idea. That's why I'm using these visuals. This represents the agile aspect of Toggle. Let me expand on that a little. If you want to apply Agile in TOGAF10, here's how you can think about it. So how exactly does Toggle adopt Agile? It's quite straightforward. It all comes down to one diagram. Basically, it consists of 2 lines. Now, the first line here is what we call architecture-driven, or more specifically, Agile architecture-driven. So we start with Agile, A-driven. What's the purpose of Agile, E-driven? Well, it's all about planning, of course. What's next? Agile delivery. So back in the day, when you split up the Agile concept like this, you might think, well, professor, we used to spend 4 to 6 months just on planning, and then 3 to 5 years on implementation. This approach is no longer feasible in today's fast-paced world. Both planning and implementation have much shorter cycles. How short exactly? Depends on how aggressive your approach is. Okay, your planning cycle might be as short as 1 month. It might take 3 months or possibly 6 months to a year. It all depends on your commit level. You'll need to decide how much effort to put in. Okay, so that's how our Toglet's approach incorporates agility, blending architecture-driven design with agile delivery methods.